Well, now that I've had my voltage regulator recall done, I can finally install my thrash and skid plate to protect that voltage regulator wire along with all the other coolant system stuff hanging out underneath the bike near the front, just in case I run over a 2x4 on the freeway or something like that. Before I move on to the skid plate, I wanted to call out a couple of comments from some viewers on the last video. So I heard from Harold who said, hey, check out M1660 in the service bulletin. It has some better photographs. So if we look here, you can see it's really just so long that it can bend over and get smashed up against the engine case here. And they show the area of concern. So it's the edge of the engine case right here that is the sharp area. And if the voltage regulator wire is rubbing against this sharp area, you're going to end up with an issue. So again, to me, you could really shorten this cable up a lot and run it underneath the frame, so underneath that crossbar that goes across, and right into the voltage regulator. You could still secure it over here to the left side of the bike with a zip tie to keep it from moving. So then I want to call out another comment from Kevin. So Kevin called out that you can take apart that voltage regulator connector, and you slide out this little holder that frees this up to come apart. So he shows a couple photos here, and you can see when it comes apart, this is what it looked like. He talked about these little pins on either side, so you have to have a tool to jam in there to collapse those pins to free these up to come out. But they will both come out, and these rubber grommets are holding them in. They are soldered in, but again, you can pull the whole connector out. So you pull those two out, but he calls out down below, he's got a good picture of it. Here's the connector, and you can pull it apart. You can see here it's completely empty. But he calls out this is the danger area of pulling the connector apart. This little pin here can easily break. So he also found a manufacturer that is selling this connector. So from the Mosier Electronics Company, you can buy this connector. And it is the exact connector, and it's only $4.15. and comes with all the parts to assemble the connector. So a much cheaper option than buying all the little parts from Harley Davidson. And then you could have this as a backup just in case you break yours, or if you just want to replace the stock one with this one. But by using this connector, you could run the wire up underneath that frame, that crossbar that goes across, and significantly shorten the length of the cable. And I think it would be way more secure and a lot safer, and certainly a lot less exposed underneath the bike. To mount this thrash and skid plate to the bike, we have 3 connecting points, 2 on this side and 1 on this side. The question is, what are the torque values, and is it really that important? Well, what I would say is it's very easy to over torque a bolt. I think as humans, we want to make sure it's tight, so we always give it that little extra pressure to make sure. Well, this is where the risk is. If you over torque a bolt, you're likely to strip it and or even break it. And then you're now in a lot of money and a lot of expense and time and frustration to repair it. So the torque value helps you prevent yourself from over torquing it. It also makes sure that it's not under torqued, so you're at least at the minimum of the fastener so it's secured safely. So torque values are important. But you don't necessarily have to go crazy, especially with Harley Davidson bolts. Most of the bolts are pretty stout and the range of the torque is pretty wide. So you can take a guess at it and give it a little torque and you probably will be okay. But if you want to be precise, it's a good idea to at least attempt to find the torque value of that mounting bolt. So where do you find torque values for your Harley Davidson? Well, you can certainly start Googling. But that information is only as good as the person who put it out there, so as good as the source. So who really knows if it's accurate, and you could get it really wrong. So the best place to go is a Harley Davidson service manual. They're in paper, and you find them in the parts department of your Harley Davidson dealer. In the back is an index of all the torque values, but you must know the name of the bolt that you're looking for, and that can be really challenging. So a few pages later, they give you an index that gets you to the general area that you're looking for, and then from there, you find that page, look for a picture, and then identify the bolt, and then read in the instructions what the torque value is. So this manual will get you there. However, in the last couple years, I've switched to the electronic version. So Harley-Davidson offers all of their service manuals on an electronic edition. Now you don't purchase them, you rent them. So you can rent it for 30 days for 35 bucks or for a whole year for $65. But you only get it for 1 year. You don't get to keep it. Now you could maybe grab some of the information you need out of it and download that. That may work for you. Now there are other companies that offer electronic versions of service manuals. But again, you have to trust the source that you're getting that from. I have really liked renting my manual from Harley-Davidson. The reason is these new bikes are so new, there's a lot of things coming out that Harley is discovering as we go. And when you rent a service manual from Harley-Davidson, you also get all the service bulletins related to your bike for that year. So as Harley-Davidson updates information or has recall information or whatever, there'll be a service bulletin posted that you can access with your login and your paid subscription to that model. So at least for now, with these new model of touring bikes, I really see value in renting the service manual from Harley-Davidson. So you may be thinking to yourself, well, that's great, but how do I find the bolt that I'm looking for in that big service manual? Flipping through all the pages, looking at the pictures, because you don't know what it's called. Well, this is a challenge, right? Especially with the paper manual. So you kind of have to figure out from the main index up front, the area of the bike you're looking at, and then go through those pages looking for where the bolt may be referenced. What I like to do is go to the Harley-Davidson main page and go to the OEM parts diagrams. Now, this was released by Harley-Davidson a couple years ago, and it's really valuable, and it's free. Start by going to the Harley-Davidson's main page. We'll go to parts, and then we're going to do shop OEM service parts. This allows you to look up any part that you're looking for your bike, and then you would take it to your dealer, to the parts manager, and give them the part number, and you'd be saving that person a lot of time. Only if you get it right. So if your parts manager is pretty experienced, sometimes I ask them to double check my work. My bike is a 2023.5 CVO. I will say Harley updates their parts and their drawings. So sometimes it's better to look at a newer model of your bike instead of your actual year. You may get a better drawing, you may have an updated part. It can be useful at least to look at some of the newer models instead of your own. But in this case, I'll stick with my 2023. So I'll start with 2023, CVO Custom, and then the Road Glide CVO. And we're presented with drawings of all the parts on the bike. And you're simply going to look through until you find the area that you're looking for, that you're working on. So we're going to scroll down here and look at the pictures. And we can see all kinds of parts of the bike here. There's the engine and etc. Sometimes you need to do show more and it'll load additional. And we'll keep going. And if we look up here, there's engine mount and stabilizer link. So in this case, we're looking at the right side of the bike. And if we look here, this is the part that we're working with. So the stabilizer link runs through the motor, and this is the bracket that holds it in place. Now you can search up here for terms, but if you search right side or right, you might find it, but it's difficult to use the search. And the search is not always very accurate. A lot of common terms are missing in their search. You're welcome to try it, but I find it's better just to look for the area of the bike you're working on. So if we go back, engine mount and the stabilizer link shows that bracket that I'm interested in. So if I click on that, I'll get an expanded size of the drawing, and we can look down here. Here it is. So this is the bolt that we're hunting for, bolt number 1. And if we look on here, it notes that it's a screw hex socket. It's 3/8 by 16th and 1.25 inches. So that's some useful information if you're going to go buy a bolt at the hardware store. Sometimes this will tell you what size bolt it is. But we're looking for that bolt. But if we go back one and we look at the main part, it's number 10. So if we scroll down through the list and go to 10, it's the bracket assembly, front engine mount, front mount. This is the key. So if we look in the service manual for the front mount, the front engine mount, we're likely to find this bolt referenced and therefore find the torque value. So with this information, I'm going to go to the service information portal and I'm going to log in. Go to serviceinfo.harley-davidson.com and it will take you to this screen. You can register for a login. Registering for a login is completely free and it does unlock quite a bit of free information in this portal. But you will need to create a login to use it at all. So create your login and log in. Now once you're logged in, you can purchase a service manual for your model. So you'll go up to the top to your profile and go to options. And there's an option in here to purchase a subscription. So it's $300 for 30 days for access to information for all models, or it's $1,500 for all models for 1 year. And they give you a couple other options on this page. But what if you only want to purchase for one model? Well, it's a bit confusing. And up above, they say to see subscription options for a specific model, year, or vehicle, please look up that vehicle before going to this option. So we'll go back to home. And on the home side, it says enter your VIN, which you could do, or you can go through the different models. So we'll pick Harley-Davidson models 1981 to current, and then a CVO, and then we'll go down and it gives you all the years. So you can pick whatever year you have. I have a 2023 CVO Road Glide, so we'll pick that, and then you do find. And when you do that, it'll bring up information specific to your bike, which is really quite helpful. And again, a lot of this is free, but we're looking to buy a service manual, at least rent it for the year. Well, I will opt to purchase a subscription for this model, which takes me to this page. So I can buy the manuals for 30 days for $35, or for 1 year, it's $65. And I think it's well worth it. Again, you get all the information about the bike. You get the service manual and the service diagnostics manual and the wiring diagrams, all electronic and all searchable. And it's really valuable with these new bikes because there's been so many service bulletins and updates to the manual as time continues. Okay, now that you have access to the service manual, you can use the search feature. And if I search for front engine, looking for that front engine mount, it takes me right here. Following steps are if you need to remove the lower front engine mount. And this is what we're looking at, the lower front engine mount. And if we scroll down, it first gives us how to remove it. And if we scroll further down, it gives us how to install it. And if we keep going, you usually get a picture. So here we go, here's the picture, and this is the bolt that we're going to be removing and reinstalling to put on the thrashing guard. So we'll go down and we'll see that that is number 3, and number 3 is referred to as screw 3. So 3 of those screws, screw number 3. And if we go back up and we read through the instructions, it says tighten screws 1, which is actually incorrect, or it's at least misleading, because it's really tighten screws number 3. So I believe that's a typo, and that happens with these manuals. There are errors throughout them. So we're going to trust our instinct that it's talking about the screws we're looking for. And it says torque from 57 to 65 Newton meters or 42 to 48 foot-pounds, engine mount, lower front end cap screws. And if we go back to the diagram, this is the bracket that we're looking at. It's number 4. And if we go down, it's noted as end cap. So that makes the description accurate. So we're looking for the end cap screws, and it notes right here, lower front end cap screws, 42 to 48 foot-pounds. Okay, so if we go back to the OEM parts list, we can look for the next bolt that we're hunting for. So again, we'll scroll through the pictures and see if we can find a match. I'm going to do show more here. Here's the engine mounts and stabilizer link that we were already working with. But this time we're looking at the other side of the engine frame. So it says frame and Jiffy stand. Well, the bolt we're looking for is right next to the Jiffy stand. So let's click on that one. So that will load, and we can see this is the bracket that we're interested in. And there's the bolt. So it's bolt number 4 that we're going to be removing and re-adding for the other side. So we're looking for that value. And number 18 is the main part. So we'll scroll down the list and we'll find 18. And 18 references, if we can get there, bracket side stand. Jiffy Stand Chrome traditional FAO paint. So the chrome version, and then there's a black version of it as well. But we're looking for the bracket side stand. So notice here they call it side stand, Jiffy Stand. It's both the same thing, but when we search in the service manual, we may need to look for one or the other. But we're looking for the bracket. Back in the service manual, I searched for Jiffy Stand because side stand didn't reveal anything. So I searched for Jiffy Stand, and down here we get different parts of it. So the Jiffy Stand sensor, not what I'm looking for. Jiffy Stand leg, not what I'm looking for. Jiffy Stand bracket. Bingo, this is the area we're interested in. It says here, refer to chassis, Jiffy Stand, install Jiffy Stand assembly, remove screws, and Jiffy Stand bracket. Bracket's what we're after. So we'll go down here, and here it is, the Jiffy Stand bracket, and it says secure the front screws, tighten torque to 36 to 42 foot-pounds. So bingo, there's our torque value for the other side of the thrash and skid plate bolt. Once again, we're back at the OEM service parts, and this time we're looking for that little screw that mounts to the cooling fan. So that's a good clue what we're looking for. I think we're after the cooling fan. So if I search cooling fan, let's see if it works. I don't trust the search much, and you can see, look at that, no results found. How could you not have a search for a cooling fan? Well, we'll go back here and we'll start over. Go back to the road glide. And we'll go back to pictures and look. So we're looking for the radiator and all the cooling system stuff. And if you can see here, cooling system engine shows the hoses and etc. That isn't it. But how about this? Coolant distribution. It's got a lot of the parts, and I think it probably has the bolt we're looking for. So we'll click on that. And you can see we got a lot of parts here. And here's the cooling fan itself. And the bolt we're looking for bolts right into that cooling fan through this carrier mount. So I think we're looking for a bolt here off the carrier mount. And you can see number 2 looks promising. And then down here is an even better view of what we're looking for. So this is, again, screw number 2. So if we look at that, screw 2, it says screw button head, and that's it. But it screws through this into this coolant housing and then into the fan. So I think our best shot here is searching for the cooling fan. That'll get us in the area of where we might find this bolt. So searching for cooling fan takes us to this page. And we can see here lots of stuff are listed, but we're looking for a drawing. Here's a drawing. And I think this is the bolt we're after. So it's bolt number 3. So if we look down here, they call 3 is a screw. Okay, great. Well, it looks like it goes to the right spot. If we keep going down, they show the carrier that it mounts to, but it doesn't show us any numbers for bolts. But that is the corner of the cooling fan that I think we're looking for. And if we look up here, so that is screw number 3, and here it says, install screws 3, tighten, and torque to 70 to 85 inch-pounds. Cooling fan bracket screws. So I think that's what we're looking for. 70 to 85 inch-pounds is a pretty light torque. It's a pretty small bolt, so it makes sense. But am I 100% right? Well, I can't be 100% because it's just not that clear in the documentation. But I think I'm pretty close just based on what I'm looking at, and the torque value seems right for that size of bolt. So maybe one of you out there is a service technician, you'll correct me in the comments, but I think we have the right torque value for this last and third bolt of this thrash and skid plate. We'll start with this one. It's on there with quite a bit of torque. So we know the torque value is fairly high for this one. And since there's no Loctite on it, I'm not going to put any on it. So this fan screw is a 5/32. Now we know the torque value is going to be very light for this. It's going into a plastic fan housing. But I also know there's a lot of blue Loctite on these screws, and it may be difficult to get off. So we'll try it first, but if it resists at all, use a torch and heat it up a little bit. But be careful, because all of this is plastic around here, so you can't heat it very much. But let's see. Up, and that comes right off. So apparently no Loctite on this one. Maybe there should be. Yep, no Loctite, but I will say that came off pretty easily. Floorboard, and this is the Jiffy Stand mount. This is the one we're after. Also 5/16. When you're removing some of these larger bolts, they should continue to come off freely. If it ever gets really snug while you're loosening it, stop and think about it. Maybe there's some pressure being placed on it that's preventing it from coming out easily. So you may need to upright the bike or put some support under the part you're removing it from. In this case, it's coming right out. Again, no Loctite is present, and it came out pretty smoothly. There's a little bit of oil on it from a recent oil change where the oil has run down to it. A mat underneath where my thresh and skid plate's going to go on, just in case I drop it. We'll start with the 5/16 bolt here. It's a little tricky because you have to hold it in place. So we'll just hold it up and we'll start the bolt by hand. You should always be able to start a bolt by hand. For these larger bolts though, you may not be able to turn it all the way by hand. So at this point I've gone as far as I can, but when I start using my wrench, if it starts to fight at all, I'm going to immediately stop, back it out, and start again. Do not cross thread these. To help me hold this, I'm going to take the fan screw and start it as well. So far so good. But should it get real tight, I'll stop and take a look. As I get closer, I'm going to push up on the plate so that it's mounted as high as it can go. We don't want to lose any ground clearance. Okay, so I'm just going to snug it by hand, and then I'll come back with the torque wrench for that final torque value. Same goes for the fan housing screw, just by hand, and then we'll torque it down at the end. Okay, so we're back on the other side. So we're going to start this by hand. So we'll move this up here, get it in place. Looks like I'm going to have to hold it. And we'll run this in by hand as far as we can. And again, it should go in freely. And for 36 to 42 foot-pounds, so I'm going to go right in the middle at 39. Make sure your Allen is fully seated before you start applying torque. Give it a good wiggle. 39.3. Back on the other side, we're searching for 42 to 48, so I'm going with 45. For the fan bolt, it's 70 to 85 inch-pounds. My digital torque wrench doesn't go that low, so I've gone to my click wrench, and I've got it set to 75 inch-pounds. That's certainly a lot tighter than the way I found it. Now, I didn't put any Loctite on it, so hopefully it will hold now that it's torqued properly. But who knows, I may regret that and wish I'd put some on there. Now, I opted to remove the radiator shroud. I decided to give it a nice polish because it had quite a few marks on it and bug guts. And I noticed in the instructions, they tell you to lubricate these barbed studs with a 50% mixture with isopropyl alcohol and distilled water. So I'm not sure what lubricating the stud does, and do they want you to wipe it on or spray it on? I really don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but we'll give it a try. Normally I put dielectric grease in the rubber bushings. They also tell you to move the steering wheel left, which is left as you're sitting on the bike, to make it easier to get this in there. I don't know, it's still pretty tight. And you just don't want to scratch underneath, so put something underneath. And then line it up, give it a push, and it should seat. Remember to push on the other side as well. Well, there you go, my video on installing the thresh and skid plate and how I attempt to find the correct torque values. Torquing bolts to the correct spec is a good idea and a good habit, especially if you're not a veteran mechanic who knows that feel. And if you're like me, I've got no feel at all, so I rely on that torque wrench. I will put all the torque values I used in the description of this video down below, so you can take a look. Remember, I am not a professional, I'm an enthusiast, so use my information at your own risk. I really hope you found this information useful, and if you did, you'll go share it with someone else. But until next time, in the friction zone.